Welcome back. You are watching The Core, and we are discussing the proposed increase in the value-added tax. Now, it's important to say that we were expecting the Minister of Finance as well as the Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Both of them sent a message apologizing, saying an event they were at had overrun. We hope we'll be able to bring them in at a later date to discuss these issues. Now, before the break, you were talking about some of the things that you think were really critical to trying to get, a handle on our basically revenue problem.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was talking about electricity tariff. The other thing I want to do is about even the cost of running government itself. Long ago, the study was carried out that took an Rosode report that talk about duplications in government, too much agencies of government. And even if you listen to even the president of the Senate, or Senate not long ago, they said they have quite a number of agencies that are doing about the same thing. If this money goes to salaries and overhead, which is where most of our money goes, why don't we rationalize appropriately so that we can use whatever money we're generating to actually provide services for the people? The other thing I think government needs to do very quickly about this VAT is the fact that, like it's done in other claim, we should introduce a floor. There's no reason why an MSME, poor people, should suffer the impact of VAT, especially since analysis is shown that 93% of collection, 97% of collection is from just 3% of the people.
Okay, but the argument that people have made, including the gentleman we had during that break, is that this tax is actually targeting a certain class of people and it doesn't have an impact on poor people because they go to Gariki Market, as he said it, and buy goods and services there. Does that sound about right to you, Dr. Justina? Is there justification for saying that this is actually a tax for the rich?
I wouldn't say it is a tax for the rich. VAT is applicable to everyone.
That's right.
It's just that you choose where you buy your goods and services. Now, part of that thing he is saying is actually the problem that is mitigating against revenue. Because if you're looking at it from that point, we are saying that we need to reject the fiscal framework. One of them is to enlarge the tax nets, to move into the interior. He mentioned 3% are the ones paying. That's not correct. That's not supposed to be so. Everyone is supposed to be involved in this. That's what is done in every nation. I'm sure you have traveled wide. There is no shop you enter. They will, no matter how it is, you will pay VAT in it. That's not applicable in Nigeria. In our own context, it's even the cities that pay VAT. When you cross to the local governments, nobody knows what is even VAT there. So FIRS still have a lot of work to do because some maybe for security reasons, but even before this insecurity started in Nigeria, they are also not covering a large problem. But talk less of when there is insecurity. There are so many places they don't even want to enter. Nobody is going to some states to talk about tax. That is why he's talking about Abuja and Lagos, because that is where you have relative security.
Okay.
So I think that we need to do more to ensure that we generate more income by enlarging our tax net. But there's something very important that I want to add to what he said. The cost of governance in all the states and at federal level. Distinguished Senator Abdullah, the Senate leader, when some people talked about the Senate making provision for some vehicles, some peculiar types of vehicles, he quickly replied that that's an insult because at government federal level, the ministers have 4 such with retinue of aides.
Okay.
Those are the areas that need to be cut off. Okay. A minister doesn't need that. Just a vehicle is okay. You don't need all those aides. Some people have 100 aides. What are you doing with them?
Okay, how realistic, though, is it, in your view, that we have a political class that are willing to dial down their appetites for the trappings of government? And this is not only the federal arm of government, because obviously the National Assembly as well is been known to sort of spend quite a lot of money on its members.
Okay, so when you say how realistic, I don't think that it is realistic with the current makeup of our political class. You have to even first look at the electoral system, to be honest. Our democracies are generally expensive, but advanced democracies have found a way to finance elections from base to the top, where people, even donors, people who believe in your cause, support you. Right? You don't have to be a billionaire to win elections. But in Nigeria, you are either financed by a godfather or you are dipping money from your pockets to spend on elections. To win elections as a governor in Nigeria, you need to have spent, on the average, 4 billion. That was what was declared by one of the politicians. So when you win eventually, naturally, except maybe God touches your heart, it's going to be very difficult, very unrealistic for you to start advocating for cuts. And
Okay, so
if you don't do that,
yes,
people are never going to trust you to suffer.
Okay, and on that note, because we've got only a few minutes to go, I'd like to come back to the panelists this way. Given that reality of what he's described, can we talk about real, tangible, likely solutions that we know stand a chance of being implemented? Starting with you.
First of all, before we talk about VAT, collection of new VAT, why don't we do an analysis of the ones at 5% that we've been collecting? To what extent have we been able to collect that? And where has it gone to? That's one. Two is that there are other avenues that we should also explore. Look at property tax, for instance. Look at the big houses that are empty all around the states and within the FCT here, owned by the same politicians here. Why don't we collect? We've been shouting about it. Collect property taxes on these houses, and you will see that the revenue would show up and we'll be left with, nothing more to look for.
So that's a practical, tangible thing that can be done. What do you think?
A couple of things. First and foremost, there is deficit. There's a trust in, deficit. Deficit in trust. People don't believe government. And I think government needs to begin to make themselves believable. Make whatever you do transparent and accountable, one. And to join with him, I think we need to begin to look at starting with re-educating the political class and ourselves. In most of the clients we talk about, 1% of the economy actually contribute close to about 80 to 90% of taxes collected. Go to the Nordic countries, and they're happy doing it. You know why they're happy doing it? They see the value and the impact of that on the populace. And I'm not sure Nigerians are adverse to paying taxes, but the General Assembly is saying, we don't know what you're doing with it. If we pay all of these things, will you deliver the services? Will provide those things? Will there be accountability and transparency? So most of us Nigeria need to begin to now demand for sufficient transparency and accountability. The thing is that more often than not, we just fold our hands. We make this noise and we go and fold our hands. But we need to constantly advocate and demand for results.
Dr. Justina?
Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, we need to look at the whole fiscal policy, fiscal framework, restructure it properly, and get it working so that the economy will boom and everyone will be happy for it. The poor will be happy, the rich will be happy if we do the right thing and if government do the right things.
Mr. Bankole?
Okay, thank you. There's a huge chunk of citizens in the informal sector, right, who are currently outside of the tax net. There are also so many other corporations that are evading tax one way or the other. And then there are lots of taxes that are actually collected that don't get to the hands of the government. So if you come up with an assessment, a rigorous assessment to actually plug some of these leakages and then find a way, a unique way to bring in the guys in the informal space, into the tax net. It can be, you can start with, for example, a blanket
We're
fee
closing.
for some type of revenue. So,
Okay.
I mean, with that, government is going to make more money without
Okay.
increasing taxes.
And in unison, please answer, should the National Assembly therefore approve this increase?
No.
I think we don't have a choice.
Okay.
As we are, I wouldn't have a choice.
we
I don't like
do.
it, but we don't have a choice.
We do. I think we do.
Okay. Well, it has been an interesting discussion, but unfortunately, we have come to the end of the program. Thank you to my guests, both those of you sitting here with me in the studio, my panel, the studio audience, but also those of you at home who were watching the program. On behalf of Channels Television and Daria Media, I am Kadria Ahmed, wishing you a very good evening.
Thank you.
This week on Gist Nigeria.